Welcome class to our second lesson in topic number 4, where I am looking at the court structure. In this topic, I am looking at the various courts. We have already in our first lesson looked at the first 3 superior courts. That was the Supreme Court. We have also looked at the High Court and the Court of Appeal. So in this second lesson, I want to look at the following courts. I want to look at the Land and Environment, the Land and Environment Court, a superior specialized court. I also want to look at the Employment. I also want to look at the Employment and Labor. The Labor Relations Court. Then I will look at the subordinate courts. In this category of subordinate courts, I want to look at the magistrates and the magistrates court. I will look at the Cathy's court. I will look at the courts martial. And then we will make mention of tribunals that are established by law as judicial bodies in Kenya. So let me begin with the Land and Environment Court. The Land and Environment Court. The Land and Environment Court. Now, this is established by establishment. It is established by the Constitution and the Land and Environment Court Act. The Land and Environment Court Act and the Constitution, which recognizes other courts of an equivalent jurisdiction to the High Court to be created, are the laws that set up the Land and Environment Court. Now, class, this is a specialized court which has the same jurisdiction as the High Court. It is actually at the same level in terms of power as the High Court. So the Land and Environment Court are at the same level. They have similar jurisdiction to that of the High Court. So what is the composition of this court? What is the composition of this court? Who sits in this court? So this court is presided over by a judge. We have the principal judge. We have the principal judge who is the head of the Land and Environment Court, plus other judges, as may be appointed by the President on advice of the Judicial Service Commission. So the Judicial Service Commission may be advising the President from time to time to make further appointments to the Land and Environment Court of other judges to serve in this court just for the purposes of enhancing access to justice. Now, what is the jurisdiction of this specialized court? What is the jurisdiction of this court? Jurisdiction of the court. What is the jurisdiction of the court? What matters does this court hear? Now, this court exercises an original and appellate jurisdiction on matters relating to land. So this is the court that matters relating to the administration and management of land will be filed. This is the court where matters relating to public, private, and even community land community land matters will be presented. This is the court with the jurisdiction to hear matters relating to contracts on land. Those contracts or matters relating to contracts on land can be filed in this court. It has an original jurisdiction on this matter. It is in this court where we can file matters relating to any interest created on land. Any interests created on land, such as leases, easements, and such. Any of those matters can be presented before the Land and Environment Court. For the first time, it has an original jurisdiction on that matter. Now, this court will be exercising its appellate jurisdiction when we have any of these matters relating to land that may have been heard by any subordinate courts. We can add appellate stroke supervisory jurisdiction, that any matter that may have been heard by any other lower tribunal on matters relating to any of these issues on land, then that matter can be presented on appeal or for the purposes of exercising supervision to this Land and Environment Court. The other court is the Employment and Labor Relations Court. Employment and Labor. Employment and Labor Relations Court. Employment and Labor Relations Court. Class, this is another court at the same level with the High Court. It is a court established to deal especially with matters relating to employment and labor relations. So, which law establishes this court? Establishment. This court is established as part of the courts that are of an equal jurisdiction with the High Court by the Constitution. The Constitution is part of the establishing laws, as well as the Employment and Labor Relations Court Act is the other law that sets up this Land and Environment Court. Now, who are the judges sitting in this court? Who sits in this court composition? So we will have judges appointed by the president to sit at the Employment and Labor Relations Court. So these are headed by a principal judge. We have a principal judge of the Labor Relations Court, plus other judges. Now, these other judges are of such a number as will be appointed by the president with the advice of the Judicial Service Commission. Now, what is the jurisdiction of this court? What is the jurisdiction? What power? What functions does the Employment and Labor Relations Court have? Now, this is the court that will be exercising an original jurisdiction on disputes that relate to an employee, disputes relating to an employee, employer, trade union, or employee federations. So any disputes that may involve any of these parties, an employee, an employer, a trade union, an employee federation, any dispute that may arise between or amongst any of these parties, then that dispute can be presented to the Employment and Labor Relations Court for the first time in exercise of its original jurisdiction. Then this court will also be exercising supervisory. Jurisdiction. This court also exercises supervisory jurisdiction or in matters relating to matters determined by the registrar, of trade unions. So they can supervise the functioning of the registrar of trade unions. So should the registrar issue any decisions relating to the registration or deregistration of a trade union, then that matter can be presented to the Employment and Labor Relations Court for supervision, where this court could be issuing declaratory orders, prohibitory orders against the decisions of the registrar. So similar supervisory jurisdiction will also be exercised on any other tribunals or lower judicial bodies that may be created by law to exercise functions on matters relating to employment and labor relations in Kenya. So these are the two specialized superior courts that we have in Kenya. That is the Land and Environment Court, created for matters land and the environment, management and administration of land, be it public, private, or community land. Then we have the Employment and Labor Relation, a superior court with an equal jurisdiction to that of the High Court, which specializes on matters employment and labor relations in Kenya. Now, we know that they have a similar jurisdiction to that of the High Court. Beyond the statement by the Constitution, you also notice their composition. They are composed by judges, same as the High Court would be composed by judges. Then what makes them having a specialized jurisdiction is that the laws that create them, that they proceed on to create a niche area that these established courts would be specializing in. The Land and Environment Court, specializing on land and environmental matters. The Employment and Labor Relations, specializing on matters relating to employment and labor relations. So those are the two other superior courts. I now want us to discuss the subordinate courts. The subordinate courts. So the first subordinate court that I want us to consider is the Magistrates Court. The Magistrates Court. The Magistrates Courts. We refer to them as the Magistrates Courts in reference to the name we give to the officers who preside over these courts. So in the same way as we have been looking at the superior courts, we want to look at these subordinate courts where we're asking ourselves, which law establishes this court? Then we also want to look at the composition of the court. Then we are also going to look at the jurisdiction of the specific subordinate courts that we are going to consider. So, establishment. The magistrate courts are established as subordinate courts under the Constitution. The Constitution recognizes that they will be part of the subordinate courts that can be, or that will be functional or operational in Kenya. The magistrate courts are also specifically created by the Magistrates Court Act. The Magistrates Court Act. So these are the two laws, the Constitution and the Magistrate Courts Acts. They are the two laws that establish the magistrate courts as a court in Kenya. Now, what is the composition looking like? The composition of the magistrates courts. Now, in these courts, we have magistrates. We have magistrates duly appointed. Magistrates duly appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. Magistrates duly appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. Now, we have various ranks of magistrates as may be appointed by the JSC that will be posted to the various magistrate courts we have in the country. Now, these ranks of magistrates would include the following. We have the lowest of the ranks, which is the resident. We have a resident magistrate. After the resident magistrate, we have a senior resident. We have a senior resident magistrate. Above the senior magistrate, we have the principal. We have this principal magistrate. We have a principal magistrate. Just above the principal magistrate, we have the senior principal. The senior principal magistrate. We have the senior principal magistrate. Then the senior most of the magistrates will be the chief. Magistrate. Is the senior most of the magistrates that can be appointed by the Judicial Service Commission to preside over matters in the magistrates court. Now, what is the jurisdiction of these magistrates court.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to get yourself a copy of our professionally prepared study text and revision partners. Visit our shop along Tom Boyer Street, Pioneer House, 3rd floor, opposite Fire Station.